Welcome back. You are still watching The Full View, and now we get into your final sports bulletin on this Thursday evening. The United Coalition for Sports and Community-Based Organization hosts a weekly webinar in an effort to find answers to the racial discrimination in local sport that has been brought into sharp focus since Lungi Ngidi's public support for the Black Lives Matter movement. After last week's session, Cricket South Africa has announced measures to combat the scourge of racism in cricket. Here is what Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool suggested happens in sport in order for it to be truly transformed.
Easy time to make things right now. And COVID-19 has revealed not only the viral pandemic, but it has revealed the viral fault lines that are in every society across the world that have given rise to Black Lives Matter, to expose the racism, the inequalities economically, etc., and has given people the freedom to speak out. And I think that's what we have been the beneficiaries of here tonight. And so I have 5 or 6 quick points that I want to make in the spirit that you introduced this discussion. We want to have the next steps. What do we do now that we've heard? My feeling is, and I've gone through the Googles and the TRC reports and everything, and I don't find any reference to sport. And I wonder, how did Ali Bacher become the TV guru that he is today, when in the same year that the Olympics kicked us formally out of the Olympic Games, he was captaining a team against Australia. The same 1976, 1980s uprising, when injustice was seen, he became the one who brought rebel tours. But he is the respectable spokesperson, commentator on our lives. And that makes me understand what gives Sim Cox the temerity, the confidence, and Boeta Dippenaar the confidence to say what they say about Ngidi. So they should be ashamed, but they are not, which means that they have not faced the truth of what happened in sport. And I would think what we need to think about, how do we continue a TRC? Because this TRC in sport started with Ngidi speaking out and saying Black Lives Matter. The need for it was amplified when Dippenaar and Sim Cox and others responded. Michael Holding put the issue in grand perspective, and Ashwell and others followed up by telling the story and confirming Ngidi. And I think as a first step, we may need to consider that it is not too late for a TRC in sport, in the sense that the truth must be told, otherwise the hunters will always write their own story. They will look at their own stats. They will lionize their own heroes, and you won't hear in the stats stories about Dick Abet, Lobo Abet, and all of those kind of people, and we need that to be written in. And that's why the truth must be told. We need closure on the pain that our sports people have had there and have had no salve to put on it. We need healing so that we don't fear sharing a room with certain people, like Quentin Davids had to fear. That we need to be able to build the basis for genuine reconciliation in sport and genuine unity. So that's the first thing. I think some of us must put our heads together to see what is the truth-telling episode in sport that must happen, where we can call a spade, and we can move on to healing and reconciliation and closure on the pain. The second point that I want to then make is to say that because the first transition in sport was stitched together for a greater political purpose, maybe this is the moment for a second transition, a genuine transformation in sport where we go back to the drawing boards, we renegotiate the rules of engagement, we restate and we transplant the values that we learned of sport in SACOS and underpin the new sports dispensation with a set of values and not simply a set of pragmatisms. Let's do what is okay and convenient for us, but let us say what values drove us and how did sport become the major transformer of our society then, but it can't do that now. And so we need to say, and in that transition, there needs to be a sub-transition. And I agree with Lungi. We need to carry forward the hard quantitative transition that numbers do count. But we add to that because we are in a very good position to also make a qualitative transition about how we are treated, about what the facilities are, about what we expect, what the mentoring is, what we expect from coaching, etc., etc. The third point that I want to make is then to return to a unity beyond Simunier. We are one. Beyond the rainbow, we're all next to each other. What is the basis of a new unity? And I want to characterize this unity as being intra-black unity and interracial unity. Now, I think we are being played, sometimes by administrators, sometimes by coaches, sometimes by federations, sometimes by unions, where they are now creating a division between black brown and black African. And we now, instead of fighting the real issues in sport, we are going to be fighting each other. Why must a black African have preference over a colored who's played this sport all their lives? I have no hesitation in saying we must have the full diversity of talent in a team. But the moment it is instrumentalized to cause intra-black division, there is going to be absolutely no chance of interracial unity. And that is something we need to speak about and create policy about in what I call a second transition. Within that new unity, I think we need to factor in the issues of gender unity. It would have been interesting if in a TRC like that doesn't only stop at 94, but continues till now, it would be very interesting to hear what the gender-based violence, the sexual manipulation, and the misogyny that happens with our women sportspersons and athletes. I think that there's an enormous story to tell. What do they get paid for the same kind of input? What are the conditions under which they leave their families and their children, etc.? And I really think that these are absolutely crucial matters that I think we need to get right for a second transition. The fourth point is we cannot be focused on the elite level, the professional level, and neglect the grassroots. The Manenbergs, the Guguletus, I hear about clipper gangs, youth brigades of gangsters selling drugs and selling this and doing that. And I think that there is no transformation without transforming right to grassroots. Because you see, at this moment, we are giving coaches and unions and codes the ability to skim off the best, take them to the best schools, nurture them there, and condemn and doom the townships to a living death. And that is absolutely what we've got to prevent, and we've got to intervene in the second transition on school sports at grassroots level, community sports, strengthen the club's ability to recruit, to train, to develop talent, to talent spot, and all of those kind of things, so that when Ashwell coaches, he already knows that 5 years from now, there's a talent developing out there at Manenberg High or at in Guguletu. And so I think the grassroots, it's absolutely, we must have development and not skimming of the talent that is happening. The fifth area that I want to say is, if we are going to take our fate into our own hands, we must find the balance between sport as sport and sport as business. You see, we often abdicate the business dimension to it. We don't look for sponsors who are transformation-minded. So we only find the sponsors who have the memory of the old and are not nostalgic for when we still selected these players and the family dynasties of players. Your surname is good enough. And so what we need to be able to do is to say that we want to grow the financial cake of sport, but we also want to distribute it equitably. Not only equitably between racial groups, but equity from the elite to the grassroots. But we won't have a say if we don't do the sixth issue in this second transition in sport. We have to stop being satisfied with the executive positions in clubs, in unions, in codes, and all of those kind of things. The honor goes to the president, the vice president, and the this and the that. But the power goes to the exco, the management. The power goes to the CEO, the COO, and those kind of people. And if we have to identify who will be the CEO, COO, and the managers of a union or of a sport, we've got to identify them now, find the best people to fast track them into management, because that's where the power lies over coaches. The power lies over selection. The power lies over contracts, more particularly, and the power lies over the disbursement of the resources, the financial resources of a union. And so I thought that this is the way in which we've got to manage what I want to call the second transition in sport. The new unity in sport, the real unity in sport, the truth and reconciliation process in sport, the managing of business and what happens on the sports field, the assumption of responsibility in the management and not only in the executive. And we must resist the idea that we are in a post-racial society, because that's what gives them the ability to go away with murder. No, Mandela was president. We're all equal now. The race is off the law books. America is learning that now. Britain is learning that now, that you can take it off the rule books, but not out of the attitudes, not out of the institutions of society, not out of social conventions, not out of the hearts and minds of coaches and selectors and all of those kind of things. And so I want to really say that for me are the 6 key coordinates around which a program of action could be developed. Because unless we do something, we are going to come back here in 10 years and lament with even more horrific stories than we've heard tonight. But I want to end by saluting the courage of our 4 sports people to speak out when so much is at stake. I want to salute your honesty, because you could have kept quiet and played it safe. And I want to salute the tribute that you are to our communities and to our historic sporting prowess in this country and beyond. Thank you very much, Bennett.